Yes, thank you, everybody, and we'll get started. Welcome to the Lichfield and Tamworth Chamber of Commerce webinar with Tamworth Borough Council. The most important people on the call today are, of course, the council to really talk about our as a town, the grant schemes for COVID-19 that have been released over the last few weeks. We have Matthew Fletcher, Head of Economic Development and Regeneration, and Jeremy Oates, Portfolio Holder for Growth and Heritage. Good morning, both.
Morning. Good morning.
Good to see you both here, and I really appreciate your time. Obviously, I know we've worked closely, and you've been doing a sterling job for businesses across the area since March, and this webinar really covers the sort of November and onwards discussions around the grant scheme. So we'll come to that in a moment. I just wanted to firstly say a huge thanks to everyone who's attended today. Interesting to hear what Matt and Jeremy have got to say. Just on Chamber business, just for a moment, I just wanted to say a big thanks to all of our members and businesses locally. Many of you are on the call today, and many more who I'm sure will see this through our other channels. It's been an incredibly tough year for everyone in the business community, but the work, communications, positivity, and just the sheer amount of effort from our business community in Tamworth, but also across the whole of Greater Birmingham, has been incredible to see, and at times really quite heartening and emotional to see how hard people have worked under such difficult circumstances. We as a chamber have tried as hard as possible to sort of match that effort in terms of supporting businesses, working with partners like the council, and really supporting your businesses as much as we can. But a huge heartfelt personal thanks to everyone, and let's hope we look forward in a positive way into next year after Christmas. I just wanted to really start with a quick presentation around a few of the information around the chamber for those perhaps who aren't aware of what the chamber do and are involved in. So bear with me one second while I share my screen, and then we'll get onto the presentation. So, as said, this is the webinar for business grants in Tamworth, availability, eligibility, and application process. Try to say that when you've had a few drinks. It's really linked to the Lichfield and Tamworth Chamber, of which we cover obviously the Tamworth area. But you'll see there's the Greater Birmingham Chambers, and then a whole range of different divisions within the chamber sort of organisation in Greater Birmingham. We also have themed divisions around the Asian Business Chamber, Commonwealth, Future Faces, Transatlantic, so for young professionals as well as international trade, and also various different divisions locally: Solihull, Burton, Chase, Sussex, Oldfield, and Lichfield and Tamworth, and of course Birmingham. We mentioned about the support, just a few stats. Over 14,000 calls were made by Greater Birmingham Chamber employees to local businesses since March and up to October, and really working with various members around our webinars, delivered to over 4,000 delegates, and also our Keep Business Moving inbox, which is directly for support. Over 340 businesses have been helped on that, and really that wouldn't have been possible, as I said previously, without the support and the engagement of all of our members and partners. So a huge thank you, and hope we can continue to do that into 2021. A bit of information: connect, support, grow is our mantra as the chamber, and really implore you to look at our website, look at our areas that you can get information from, grow your business, get support from fellow members from other organisations, and of course this is part of what we're doing today. A last one, obviously today, is around the sort of local grants within Tamworth, but definitely worth, if you haven't already, looking at our COVID-19 support grid. Currently on version 57, I think it is, so just shows how much it's changed, and I'm sure Matt and Jeremy will come on to a little bit about how quickly their situation changes locally, but really this gives you an opportunity to look at what support, what grants, what advice is available across Greater Birmingham, and it gives you a bit of information about what the support is, how you can access it, and how it is available, and a huge effort from our policy team to keep that updated as often as possible. So we'll move on to today's webinar. As I said, we'll have the introductions from ourselves, and then the presentation from Matthew and Jeremy. Matthew is a real advocate for the business community in Tamworth, and has worked for the council for many years. Has been a huge supporter of the chamber, and as I said, the Tamworth business community through his work with the council. Matthew will go first, and then we'll have Jeremy, who also has been at the council for, I think, over 20 years, Jeremy. So that is a seriously good effort and longevity, and is the portfolio holder for growth and heritage, and also looks as a local representative on the local outbreak board for COVID-19. So some interesting insights with regards to Jeremy's local knowledge around that as well. So without further ado, thank you to everyone for coming, and we'll send you over to Matthew. Just as a quick start, you'll see the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. If you do have any specific questions for Matt or for Jeremy, please put them in the Q&A box and we can answer them following the Q&A after the presentation. There is also a chat box as well, so by all means put in their feedback, thoughts, however you want to communicate with us, and we'll certainly come to those communications as we go through the webinar. So Matt, it's over to you. Let me just swap presentations and share my screen, and then you can get started.
Okay, thanks very much, Chris. Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see a few names that I recognise in the attendee list. So yeah, those that don't know me, Chris ably introduced me, but my name is Matt Fletcher. I'm Head of Economic Development and Regen at the council, so that's a very broad remit, but one of the main things I look after is business support and advice and sort of economic growth. So yeah, this morning, my intention is to run through some of the technical grants that are available as part of the national rollout of what are called local restrictions. So bear with me, there is a fair amount of technical information in there. All of the information will give you links at the end, can be found on either the gov.uk website or the Tamworth Borough Council website, and they'll be included in the presentation. So if there is anything you want to ask afterwards, my contact details are now on the screen. Give me a call, drop me an email, or go on the web. So if we could move on to the next slide, please, Chris. Basically then, just a quick summary is that at the end of October this year, government announced a number of financial support for businesses based on the potential for a second national lockdown and the tiered system of local restrictions in the form of predominantly grants. So as councils, as local authorities, we are required to adopt a policy that will distribute this money through particular periods of restrictions, which I'll come on to shortly. So the main principle of these policies is that the council will distribute the funds, but they still have to be in accordance with what government stipulate and how they want them to be spread out. So if we then go over to the next slide, which is a summary table, I've tried to make it as simple as possible for the main types of grants that are open. So in order that I don't get too tongue-tied, I'm going to refer to them as acronyms as we go along. But what you'll see is really there's two types. There's local restrictions, and then there's additional restrictions grants. So in terms of clarity, LRSG, which is the Local Restriction Support Grant, these grants are defined by government based on business rates, hereditaments, so they're based on rateable values, and they particularly target the restrictions that are imposed at a local or national level. So there are three particular local restrictions support grants. So you can see at the top there, closed. So this is any business that has a business rate liability, so directly is liable for business rates, and was told you must close either in national lockdown, so November the 2nd, not November the 2nd, sorry, November the 5th to the 2nd of December, or have to close because they're instructed to, because they are in a particular tier. So for example, Staffordshire businesses at the moment are in tier 3, so certain business functions are still not allowed to legally open. Then I'll just miss out the additional one for the time being, but then there's local restriction support grant for sector. This is a very specific part of the economy that has not been physically allowed to open since March, and I'll come on to that in a minute, but an example would be a nightclub. And then there is the open, which is targeted at businesses that are severely impacted by the tier system but haven't been mandated to close. So I hope that makes sense. I will go into more details about them shortly. And then the additional restrictions grant is again targeted by local authorities. So this is, we have discretion as a local authority to target businesses in our economic area that have been severely impacted by the results of the tiered system or national lockdown, and we'll come on to that shortly. So if we can go on to the next slide, please, Chris. In terms of the local restriction support grant, both closed and sector, it's very straightforward from government in the sense that businesses who have a liable business rateable value of less than 15k get £1,334 on a 28-day rolling basis. So, for example, they're eligible to get that money for the lockdown, national lockdown period. And then if Staffordshire stays within tier 3 for the whole of December, they'll get the same amount again for that period, and that will continue until the tier system changes, which is reviewed then on a 14-day basis. So in terms of rateable value between 15 and 51,000, that's £2,000, and in businesses with a hereditament over 51, rateable value over 51 get £3 grand. So in terms of the local restrictions support grant, I've covered some of that. So mandated to close, tier 3 regulations. So the next slide, sorry, Chris. Tier 3 regulations are reviewed on a 14-day rolling basis. So these are businesses that are providing in-person services to customers from their premises. That was, in the lockdown, so non-essential retail, leisure, personal care. In tier 3, obviously, certain areas of those business streams are allowed to open again. So in terms of, particularly for the national lockdown period, the term closed for the purpose of these grants means that the primary or substantive business activity was forced to close. So for example, there's a cafe that rang me up, and they're not allowed to, obviously during the lockdown, they weren't allowed to have people in the business, but they were allowed to do takeaway. But that still meant they could access the grant because their primary business was closed. So businesses that are able to continue to trade because they don't depend on providing direct in-person support from premises and can operate differently and effectively remotely aren't eligible for the grant. So it's only people that have to close their primary business location. Next slide, please, Chris. I won't go into this in too detail, but there's a list there of the types of businesses that were forced to close. In Tamworth, my understanding is that we didn't have any because the nightclubs that we did have traded as bars. So there's no businesses that are eligible for that, but they must have been trading on the 23rd of March. And government reserve the right to add other businesses to that as they see fit. So if we can move on to the next slide. So now, I think this is important to say, where we come on to now, all the grants I've sort of discussed prior to that have been mandated by government what we can or can't do. The next two are ones that Tamworth Borough Council has a discretionary basis for. So local restriction support grant open and the additional restrictions grant. Now, just for clarity, every authority will take their own approach to this based on the unique circumstances in their area. So these grants and this process will only apply to Tamworth Borough Council businesses who are located here or relevant residents. So that would not include areas like Polesworth, Kingsbury, Fazeley or Marloke, which sit with either in North Warwickshire or Lichfield district. So I think that's just an important marker, because the boundaries of Tamworth are quite tight. So if people are unsure, they can get in touch and check, but the best thing to do is check where you pay your business rates or council tax to. That will be the main marker. So yeah, if we can go on to the next slide, Chris. The local restrictions support grant open. So this is targeted at businesses that are, aren't legally required to close, but are severely impacted by the restrictions under local tiers. So either high or very high. So I think a relevant example could be, you know, theatres at the moment in some tiers are forced to close. So perhaps, you know, if someone provides till software or lighting or some sort of supplies to the theatre trade, then they would be classed. That's just an example. Would be classed as, you know, severely impacted. So as an authority, we have the freedom to determine the precise eligibility for these grants, and that will match what I'm coming to at the moment, to ARG, which is the additional restrictions grant. In this case, though, the open grants, government are expecting it to be primarily targeted at hospitality, hotel, bed and breakfast, and leisure businesses. And the council is currently just finalising our policy on this to ensure that it's very clear which businesses we will be supporting as part of this particular open LRSG grant scheme. I hope this is clear so far. And what government have said, and I think this is a really important point, the aim is to try and support sustainable businesses that have not been legally required to close, but have been severely impacted. Now, that word sustainable means a lot to different people, but ultimately, I think from our perspective, you know, if we will be looking at ways just to ensure that the business, you know, was prior to COVID, you know, an active trading business, you know, and I think we'll offer more details with the policy around that, what that looks like in terms of evidence. So if we could go on to the next one, please, Chris. So the additional restrictions grant, all councils have received a lump sum payment of around £20 per head of population, but this has to last us to the end of March 2022. Government have stipulated that they expect this to take the form of discretionary grants, but we also have the ability to look at wider business support activities, either on our own and working with other local authorities and other local enterprise partnerships. So as you can imagine, we're already looking at how we do that, and we speak very closely with colleagues across the county and indeed across the West Midlands to see best practice and what other people are doing. And again, it's around this idea of, you know, have not been legally required to close, but have been severely impacted. So there will be, again, we're in the final processes of defining the policy, and it will support the previous grant, the open grant I've just discussed, but it will target businesses that have been impacted as a result of the restrictions. So I think it's really important to state this is not the same sort of grant that we as councils disperse during April, May and June. This is very targeted at sectors of the economy that have been impacted by the restrictions of the national lockdown and tier 3. So there is a marked difference this time. We're going to take a phased approach to this. So phase 1 of the additional restrictions grant will cover the national lockdown period, so the 5th of November to the 2nd of December. We will then be rolling out another phased approach, reviewing it regularly around the ARG to make sure that businesses and business sectors are, you know, appropriately supported. I think the difficulty we've got at the moment is, you know, if we set something out now for a year, we don't know where we're going to be. One sector might recover more than another. One sector might decline more rapidly than another. So we're very conscious of trying to be very reactive and supportive to our business community. And our intention at the moment is to review the second phase of ARG on a sort of indicative sort of quarterly basis at the moment. But that will obviously depend on the tier structure imposed at government national level. So I hope that's sort of clear. Can we? So yeah, I've sort of covered everything there. On can we just go back one? Sorry, I just want to make sure I've covered everything for everyone. So I think particularly there, we are going to be covering businesses, while not mandated to close, provides goods or business-to-business services to a customer base that's mandated to close. So we will be offering a bit more guidance on that shortly, but there's a few examples there. We'll also be supporting market traders and businesses based from home. This is during the national lockdown period, businesses based from home that were unable to trade. So yeah, and hopefully then into the phase 2 section we'll have similar measures, but we are just finalising those. So I hope, I'm sorry that's quite technical and quite detailed, but I hope that gives some form of clarity. To date, the local restriction support grant closed, so for the national lockdown period, has been live on the council website, and as of I think Tuesday we're already at 300 applications, and my understanding is those are in the process of being checked for payment. And then we are in the very final stages of just ensuring that our policies on the additional restrictions grant, the open grant, are fit for purpose and relevant. Yeah, and we'll be publishing those imminently, subject to relevant approvals. And then yeah, I'll just put there, you can click on those links. I would personally stick to the chamber government grant guidance and the Borough Council guidance as the primary source. And I think particularly our site and the government site and the chamber sites are, the ones that are updated, most frequently. So, but my contact details are on there. I'm sorry. I hope I've explained it clearly. And yeah, I hope that's interesting and useful to people.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, that's a lot of information to go through, and I don't know if you practiced that, but that was very well sort of explained and organised. So no, really appreciate that, man. We'll come on to some questions. I can see there's a few questions coming already, which is great, from Kyle and from Martin. So we'll come on to those in a moment, guys. I just wanted to bring Jeremy in as well, just quickly. Jeremy, just give us your thoughts. Obviously, you're the sort of the council lead on that. So just give us your thoughts from a council, and a sort of from your point of view as well, and then we'll move on to the question.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for inviting me, and thanks for putting this event on. And I think just want to highlight, it was due to the good networks we've got with the chamber and with the GBS LEP and the SS LEP that we were able to get the grant funding out so quickly in the March-April phase. We were one of the fastest authorities in handing that out, and that wasn't just because Matt and the team are excellent. It was also because we got good connections and good networks, and we were able to get that message out. But also we were able to contact businesses directly. So I think that just needs to be just a little marker there to say how grateful we are for the input of networks like yourself. Just in terms of one of the points that you mentioned at the start and that Matt said, I have never known anything move as quickly as the world is that we're living in now. In terms of a live event, my inbox is constantly lighting up with emails with different updates, different changes to guidance, different changes to legislation, what's the latest situation, and to keep up with it is a challenge in itself. So if I may, just two things I'd like to quickly pick up on the pandemic itself, but also I'd like to just highlight why I'm here today and why it's of interest to me that we make sure we get these grants right. So we'll start with that one. The additional restrictions grant is something we're working on at Borough Council to get that policy right. And in terms of elected members, Our role in that is to make sure people don't fall through the gaps. And one of the last slides that Matt put up mentioned market traders, and I'm going to use those as an example. They're what I would call the traditional cash business, rather than rather than a big established shop which has all sorts of or outlet, all sorts of different transactions. And it's these cash businesses that are often difficult to identify, that they need support. And I'm using market traders as an example. There are loads of others, personal care services, cleaners, whatever else, who are small businesses that have generally historically dealt with in cash and have therefore not been entitled to these sorts of grants. So for me, it's key that we get this right, and we're able to support businesses in no matter what sector they're in, but also no matter what element of those sectors they are. It's okay helping a hospitality sector, but if we're not reaching the parts of it that are really struggling, then we're failing. And in terms of a thriving business community, the stronger the business community is, the stronger the business economy is, the easier my job is, because the public sector can step back and the world continues to turn. So for me, it is key that we support business and industry, and we keep Tamworth vibrant, as I say, because it makes my life easier, makes the public sector life easier, and we can shrink it a little bit. In terms of the pandemic, I just wanted to steal this opportunity. The tiers are reviewed on a fortnightly basis. I feed back into the Outbreak Control Board, and there's a lot of information out there at the minute. It's ever-changing picture. My primary focus is to get us down through the tiers. I don't want to be in tier 3. I don't want to be in tier 2. I want to go out and have a pint and relax at a weekend, and therefore put money into the economy and so on. We're only going to get there if we all do our bit. And at the minute in Tamworth, the majority of people are doing their bit. We see stuff on social media about compliance and whatever. We're actually doing okay. So don't get too distracted by some of the things you see on the internet. But the key thing we need to do is we're one of the lowest. We're the lowest districts in Staffordshire for our testing rate, and we're one of the highest districts in Staffordshire for our positivity rate. And those two are clearly linked. The more tests we have, the lower percentage of people test positive, the quicker we move down the tiers. So it's not just about case rate, it's about testing rates, it's about positivity rates. It's also about hospital capacity. And I know people don't like me saying this, but the more people that are tested and test positive, the more isolation there is, and we can isolate people, then the less people that go into hospital. And if we can stop people going into hospital, we'll move down the tiers quicker. So that's my public service message. But I just wanted to get that across, and I appreciate that's a challenge for businesses. And I know they've coped very well with working from home throughout the summer, but that doesn't suit everybody. But the quicker we can get through that challenge and through these tiers, the better, and we can open up the economy again. So those are the key things that are raised. Thank you.
Wonderful. No, thanks, Jeremy. And I think some public service announcements there that are really important as well. And I know we've got our Birmingham Economic Review with the Public Health Director of Birmingham next week. And again, from a more detailed point of view as well, really interesting discussions and important themes that you brought up there, Councillor Oates. And of course, as you said, the testing rate is vital. So no, thank you very much for that, Jeremy. Appreciate that. Well, no, thanks both. We'll get onto the question now. So I see some coming in. I can see, there's a few more people who yet to ask questions. If you do have any questions, please do ask away in the Q&A section at the bottom. So just wanted to come on to Kyle Raffo and Bellows' first question. So Matt, I think, can you see this? Can you see this question? Or do you want me to read it out?
No, I can see it. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll quickly read it out just in case. But Eligibility, is this applicable to manufacturing businesses who've lost significant revenue due to implementing COVID-safe work environments, reduced ongoing works due to not being able to complete on-site services, who are in tiers, and also predominantly working in the hospitality event sector? I can also see the ARG might cover the above. Do we have a rough date as to when this will be available, along with amounts paid through this grant? Good question, Kyle. Matt, over to you.
Yeah, okay. So there's two sections to that. Well, there's three sections to that question.
Yeah.
So if I take the first bit, the grant is not there about the implementing of COVID-safe work environments. I think in this instance, it's very clear that it's about the impact on the business of its trading because of national restrictions. So the first grant period in April to July, that was, that money there gave grants of 10 grand or 25 grand, depending on your rateable value, out to businesses. That was designed initially to cover premises costs and any updating costs to COVID. This particular grant fund process is all about impact of closures and restrictions, and unfortunately not the fact you've had to implement certain things in order to make your work environment safe. However, the bit that then Carl goes on to say around not being able to complete on-site works at clients is because they're closed, then that is a direct impact of the restrictions. So yes, for example, my brother-in-law is a mechanical engineer, and during national lockdown, he could not access some of the places he wanted to go to. Therefore, his business was unable to make that revenue because those places were closed as a result of national lockdown. So the first part is an unfortunate no. The second part is a yes, and again, that will depend on whether the business has a rateable value. So it can, if it's got a rateable value in terms of the additional restriction grant, if it can prove that, about 80% of its business was impacted, then yes, they will be able to go for that. And we're hoping, we are literally working on finalising the ARG policy as we speak. Both Jeremy and I have spent quite a lot of time on it this week. We're hoping to get that through early to mid next week. And then based on the application process, what I should have cleared is government require us to do quite a few audit checks before we allow payments. So there will be a slight delay between application and payment, but we'll try to make that as minimal as possible for people. And
just on that, Matt, I know when we've spoken with Lichfield yesterday and Jonathan's team in Lichfield, they were absolutely stressed, couldn't stress enough about getting the information correct on the application. I know that's, I'm sure you'll have a similar thing, but just give us an insight into perhaps some of the challenges you face when those details perhaps aren't always correct.
So this is the difficult thing, and some of the times why it takes longer between when government announce it to when we are, can go to application, because we're having to make sure all the application forms completely cover all the requirements that government asks us for. And in some cases, with small businesses, they either don't have that information or they don't have it to access. It's a lot easier because we've been through the first process. But what I would say to businesses, if it's on the application form, it's there for a reason. The policies, we're putting a lot of effort in to make sure they're as straightforward and as clear as possible. But I've spent sort of the last 15 minutes describing these grants, and even I am getting a little bit tongue-tied and confused around them. So we are there to support as well, and my team particularly can offer sort of guidance on applications. We don't get involved in the processing part because that's another section of the council regards finance, but we are here to try and clarify things and help people through the process. So I think that's a really good point. I can't stress it enough. Just take a bit of time on the application form, make sure the information is all filled in correctly, and if there's a requirement for evidence, which there will be for the ARG, we're just finalising what exactly we need, but just make sure you provide that, and then the process will be very smooth and payment will be very smooth as well.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, perfect. And just on that the sort of 80%, the 80% sort of drop or the significant, effect. I know we've got a few accountants on the line, which I'm sure may be able to help with that. But I suppose that's the key, isn't it? It's having your figures right, and like in the previous grants, is having that information correct. But do you know how that will be judged yet, or is that again that's
not you know, I can't say 100% at the moment, but it will be very similar to how we did our discretionary grants in the summer. And basically, there will be an element of finance, you know, which will be very clear to see. There'll be an element of the fact that we know certain sectors were mandated to close. So there is an understanding, certainly from all of our parts, which businesses will be impacted. But also, there will definitely be, like there was in the process in the summer, an area for businesses to quickly describe how they've been impacted. So, you know, we are making this process proportionate. So whilst I'm saying all these things in the requirement, they will be proportionate to the level of grant we will be giving out as the ARG. So, you know, we're not expecting a 10,000 word dissertation on, you know, what we will be ensuring is that, you know, we have got enough information to make a sensible decision. And you know, the government priorities about preventing fraud and ensuring that the right businesses get the support, and that's our real focus. And that's why we're just taking that little bit of extra time on the ARG to make sure that the right businesses, you know, are still there to trade when hopefully we come out of this, you know, hopefully in the near future.
Thanks, Matt. No, perfect. Great. Thank you. Coming on to Martin Rose at Rose Events. As a Tamworth-based company operating from home, we provide entertainment to popular tourist attractions such as Drayton Manor, Cadbury World, to name a few. Since March, our work has been severely impacted, especially with Drayton Manor going into administration. Only as 20k money we will never see. As a limited company director who takes profit from the business in dividends when available, we have been excluded from all support. Would there be any help for companies like myself whose venues are forced to close, having been put into tier 3? So again, a real, not the only sort of business that's been affected by those tourist attractions. So Matt, if you or Jeremy, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think based on what I can see there, then the ARG grant is designed for that type of business. I think we have to be careful that you have to treat the administration of Drayton Manor separately from the COVID, and you know. But yes, you know, in principle, from what I can see there and the information that, an individual business provides a services to a sector that has not been able to open or has been severely impacted, then in principle, yes, we'd have to obviously, you know, just get a bit more information. And, you know, I am cautious about the administration side because, you know, whilst COVID will have played a part in that, we sort of have to treat that a little bit separately because, you know, but you know, certainly from what I can see, ARG is designed to support this type of business that's not being able to access other funds in the place.
And Martin, thank you for that. And certainly, if it sounds like it's worth you having a discussion with the council and getting some further information over to them. So, Martin, thank you for that. If we go on to Laura Rhodes next, we are Vogue Display Limited, a Tamworth-based business. We design and build exhibition stands that therefore have been unable to trade due to national restrictions. We're about to finish our most profitable trading year and have customers ready to kick off when exhibitions are allowed. Which grants would you recommend and what types of amounts could we expect?
So from this one, again, this would, from what I can see there, would attract the ARG, both for phase 1 to the national lockdown. So there'd be a payment for that. And we're just finalising that. So unfortunately, I can't say exactly what the value would be, but it would be similar to the wise, going forward for the tier 3 recommendations, based on the relevant elements of evidence we've discussed, then absolutely. I think, you know, I'm aware of the company, so I would say, you know, pretty much based on that, ARG going forward into the tier 3 because the sector's completely closed. Everyone's aware of that. And the grants amounts, we're just finalising that because what we need to ensure is, as we've said, and sorry to go into details, but the grants for people with a rateable value who are forced to close is rolling on a 28-day basis. So, for example, if tier 3 restrictions stay till March, you know, they will get, say, a business that's forced to close that gets a grant of £1,300 will get that 4 times. So what we need to understand there is with the how much money we've actually got in the restrictions pot and marry that up against priorities, which how many businesses we've got in certain sectors. So you know, hopefully, I'm sorry I can't be more clear on that, Laura, but we'll aim to get that out, like I said, as quickly as possible.
And I think yeah, that's a sort of an interesting point, isn't it? Is again down to the uncertainty, and Jeremy, you might want to make a comment on this. It is the uncertainty of the situation, and it's very difficult on a discretionary basis to know what's happening in 2-3 months. So yeah, as you say, and what happens in those months will change those businesses that are affected. So that must be a difficult difficult situation for the council, Jeremy, and something that I'm sure you're aware of.
Yeah, and it comes from both sides. We're trying to predict how the pandemic itself is rolling out and the virus, and we're also trying to predict what the government's next decision is. So we know that this tiering system's until February at the earliest, and we know we've got a pot of cash. So the challenge for us, the balance right now is who do we support now, and how much do we keep back for February or onwards, and come the end of this tiering system, we don't know we genuinely have no idea what the government are going to do in February. So it's very much a guessing game with as much information as being thrown at us at any one point, and we've just got to strike that balance. It's a challenge.
And I think that the key, isn't it, is there's some really interesting businesses here that have slightly different requirements, and telling you about their situations will really help that process, I'm sure. And as Matt said, the phased rollout hopefully will help that in one regard. So no, really appreciate that, Jeremy. Thank you. So we'll carry on with the questions. Some really good questions. So we've got Alex, Lumberjacks. Pre-pandemic, we could have a capacity of 21 at venue. Currently, if we have a couple booked, we have to book it down for that lane. So effectively, we've gone from 24 people to 4. Are we likely to get support through the LRSG Open?
So I just need to think about this one. Is this the axe throwing?
Yes.
Yeah. So my understanding, I'd have to look into it more, but my sort of the way I go to is yes, because you've been affected by the restrictions.
Similar to takeaway, bars offering takeaway, perhaps, in the sense that they have been.
I'd have to look into that one though.
Okay.
I'd have to look if I'm honest, that's a very particular one that I'd have to go back and check. So Alex, if you want to drop me an email, I'll get one of the teams to look into that more specifically for you, because I need to understand a bit more context about that, I'm afraid.
Thank you. No, that's fine. Yeah, certainly, Alex, get in touch with Matt. We have John Ward. John, hope you're well. Timing Solutions provide the official timing for motorsport throughout the world, based in Tamworth. Business I know really well, and I know John is a great ambassador for Tamworth schools and Tamworth business, and certainly likes your motor racing, which is just like any other area has been really badly affected. So we're ranked 5th highest supplier in the world. We're struggling to keep our highly technical staff. Can we apply?
And again, my answer to this one, my understanding, obviously I'm aware of the work Timing Solutions do. My understanding is yes. I just need to check it, because obviously you've not been told you have to close, but you have been impacted naturally by the events. I will have to look into that again, just in the nature that I am aware motorsport is happening around the world, just in a different way. So I think the answer is probably yes. I think it would be eligible, but I would need to just check that out again, because it's quite a very specific example and has an international context as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that and I know John has been accessing various other areas of support, and I think that's the key as well, isn't it? Is there's other areas linked to the government support around furlough and all the rest of it that I'm sure would help John along the way. And I'm sure you've been involved in that process as well. And it just shows, doesn't it, the pure, the huge amount of different examples there can be, and actually in a positive way shows the diversity of the Tamworth economy, that you can have a business based doing such interesting work from a unit in Tamworth, which is really positive, and hopefully we'll continue into 2021. So continuing with the other further questions, Paul Simcox, Premier Technical Recruitment. Yes, hello Paul. I know you joined the chamber recently, which is great. So I was very fortunate to receive a local authority discretionary grant from Tamworth COVID grants team back in September. As the engineering recruitment industry across the UK as a whole has remained subdued, to say the least, will I automatically be considered for any future grants that may be available, or will I need to submit a new application?
So yeah, in all cases, I'm afraid it's a new application, because the grant schemes change considerably. So as you can see already, we had the business rate sort of schemes back in the early part of the year. Then we had discretionary schemes. Now we've got these restriction schemes, and there are likely to be others in future that will target specific sectors. So yeah, you will need to submit a new application. I'm afraid you won't be automatically considered, and that's the same for every business. The only way that might change is obviously, for example, if you're a tier 3 business effective that has to shut down, then once you've done one application, my understanding is that will just be rolling. You won't need to apply again
On a month basis, yeah. If the restrictions
remains, but that's the only exception to that rule. Yeah. Any new grants that come out, unfortunately, the onus is on the business to apply. But as I said earlier, the Chamber of Commerce have got, Chapter 57
version 57. I might be exaggerating. It might be version 56, but something along those lines.
And our website is constantly updated. And I have to say, the gov.uk website, I use it all the time just to sense check and double check. It's an excellent resource.
Okay. Brilliant, thank you, Matt. No, wonderful. And conscious of the time, so I think we'll do the last question. I don't see any of the questions in. If you have got one last one, please do send them in. We've got one last one for Lawrence, and we'll close it there. So if we do Paul Minchell first. So in tier 2, pub clubs will be able to reopen to sell alcohol as long as the customers are eating a substantial meal. There is info available that states takeaway food delivered to a premises pub or club will allow that business to remain open. And sell alcohol to those customers eating that takeaway. Are TBC aware of this, and will they actively support businesses in this position?
Can I take that away? Because I wasn't aware of that information, and it's more an environmental health enforcement question rather than finance one for Matt. But I've made a note of that. So if I can take that away, check out what the guidance is, and then if I feed back to you, Chris, can you forward it to?
Yeah, by all means, I can forward it to Paul, or Paul, if you're able to speak to Jeremy directly. But yeah, in the first instance, drop it over to us, and we'll be able to get it back.
Yeah, okay. I'll do some digging this afternoon on that one.
Okay, thank you. Hope that helps, Paul. Wonderful. And finally, Lawrence, we are a gymnastics club. As a sessional-based service, we have had to reduce capacity, both in class size and cleaning time, reducing sessions available to operators each day. In addition, some types of classes are not able to operate. Would we be eligible for the ARG?
So I've just been thinking about that. I think this is more likely to be the local restriction support grant open, because it targets leisure businesses. I'm not going to say 100% yet, because we're still finalising what a leisure business is defined as within Tamworth. However, I would say no to additional restrictions grant, but yes to the local restrictions grant open. So look for the focus on the policy, Lawrence, on the local restriction support grant open when that is around and out, if that's okay. Brilliant.
Thank you, Lawrence. Wonderful. I think that's all the questions. Matthew, you can. I'm trying to think of a quote around the. What was the quiz with the black chair? Mastermind, wasn't it? That was the quiz. But I'm really hopeful. That's been really informative and some really good questions. And thank you. I know the Tamworth community has really pulled together, and it's great to see that people are engaging and asking these questions. It's vital, and some really interesting questions, and hopefully some answers. And if not, I'm sure, as Matt and Jeremy have said, they will get back to you on some of those more sort of detailed questions. So we're just a little bit over, but I think it was important to get through all those questions. Thank you for your feedback on the chat as well, Kyle, and yeah, again, thank you to everyone who was attending. There will be a video of this go out on social media. Obviously, get to the Tamworth Council site, the government site, and the Chamber COVID-19 support grid, or pick up the phone to any of us to ask any questions, and we'll always help. I think a key area as well that we really wanted to sort of highlight is tell other people in the area about these discussions and about this information. It'd be great to have 5,000 businesses on these calls. That isn't always the case. It'd be pretty busy if we did. But genuinely, tell a neighbour, tell your friends, tell your contacts in your networks, share it with different groups that you all belong to. We as a chamber do try and get out to as many of those as possible, but as Jeremy said, smaller micro businesses, based at home, whatever it may be, may not even necessarily be aware that they're liable to some of this funding, and that's so important for the economy as we go. So Matt, Jeremy, thanks again. Really appreciate your time as always, and thank you for Jess in the background to organise the event, and thanks most of all to the delegates, and we will look forward to speaking to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you all.